While you were out of town, Christian, I can vouch that your staff was there 2 out of 5 days. So,
In the 2 days they were partying.
right,
That's great, Mike. Thank you.
Check,
just
check the liquor level.
standing up for them.
Always looking out for me. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So let's hit each one of those questions. So, Dad, on an open house, do you need to have everyone that comes to your open house? Do you need them to sign a buyer broker agreement?
No, no, you're there as a subagent of the seller. It's a question of fact, really, if you go over the line and start giving, eliciting confidential information that Joanna Watkins referred to in her FAR video.
Yeah, this is something that I think Nabor made a couple of videos or did some classes, and they got it dead wrong, which is interesting to me. Not that they, maybe not dead wrong. They said that if it's an open house, you don't need anything signed, but if it's a private showing, you do, and that's not true at all.
That's not true.
If you're the listing agent, you don't need a buyer broker agreement to show the house. What's the linchpin, Dad? Where's it change?
When you start giving more information than the seller has authorized, when you're not just the subagent of the seller. And I mentioned Joanna Watkins, she's the chief counsel for the Florida Realtors. She has a video on the YouTube channel for the Florida Realtors. It's like 27 minutes long. And she cited Florida statutes on, it's a question of fact. And when you start asking confidential information, then you need it. And I know you and I have talked about this before. Patty Ketchum, who the Florida Real Estate Commission member, she had a wonderful video on the YouTube channel for Florida Realtors. When they want more, then your owner has authorized you to give the guy in the street walking in the door. And her move was, let me know the name of your realtor. I'm happy to email the additional information if you find this place, to your liking.
Right. Yeah, and actually what's interesting, has it been a year now that the NAR settlement has been imposed? Almost
In
just
March
about a
of
year.
2024?
Yeah, well, and then they
August,
started implementing it in August.
August,
Some associations
August
it was
17th, I
July.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're about a year. So there are those great videos, great on to Florida Realtors.
Yeah.
But what I really like are the FAQs. And Dad, you kind of got me on to the FAQs.
73 and
Um,
74.
so here they are. If you just type in NAR FAQs or settlement, this is the first thing that pops up. And I love this because it's black and white. You can base your practice on the answers that are listed here. And then you may want to go back occasionally because over the last 12 months, they've added questions and answers and they've taken away a couple, I believe.
Yeah.
So a practice change requiring written agreements with buyers is triggered by two conditions. It only applies to MLS participants working with buyers and is triggered by touring a home. What does it mean to be working with the buyer? Working with language is intended to distinguish MLS participants who provide full or limited brokerage representation or services for the buyer, such as identifying potential properties, arranging for the buyer, performing facility negotiations. Like at an open house, from MLS participants who simply market their services or just talk to a buyer, like at an open house or providing an unrepresented buyer access to a house they have listed. So I would double check this and read it when you have time, but this is how you should set your standard of practice. If you are the listing agent, you can host an open house, you can show them the property. You're not necessarily working with the buyer. In that sense, Dad, would you say you're working for the seller?
You're working for the seller.
Yeah.
They refer to you in other FAQs as a subagent of the seller. That's the phrase they use.
Yeah. And then they have another one here, number 74, on what does it mean to tour a home.
That one I like because they really changed it. They had an earlier version of these FAQs, and it talked about the situation where the buyer had toured the home on their own, and then they come to you, the realtor. So touring is under the direction of the realtor. So they could do their typical, like your grandfather would come down here and go looking at all the open houses on his own. And a lot of my dad's clients would do that. And then if they saw something they liked, then they'd call my father. So if it's under his direction, saying, okay, now we need to look at how much, seawall footage we have, how old the roof is, what else is available in the neighborhood to see if it's a fair price, that sort of thing. When you're getting into the weeds a little bit, now you're under the direction of the realtor, and you're touring officially for purposes of this settlement.
Would you say that if you're the listing agent and a buyer wants a personal one-on-one tour of the house, that's what let's say the buyer calls it that. It's like, hey, I'd love to tour the house. Can I come and do that with you? Do you need a buyer broker agreement in that scenario?
Part of me is I'm worried about risk because, you get the guy on the street is going to think, if you answer any, what color the sky is, any question at all, people have the perception that you're on their side, that you're helping them out. So that really frightens me from, being an attorney at Downing Fry. I at a minimum, if you look at the FAR showing agreement, which is like one page, or the pre-touring agreement, one page, I'm not representing you at this point, you don't owe me anything at this point, that is so idiot-proof that I would get that just so you can avoid the misunderstandings, or the non-agency form. Say,
Do you need it?
Legally, you don't. Risk prevention, I would say, yeah.
Right. So if you have an open house, or if you just have a listing and someone wants to come in and see it real quick, that's really not a problem.
Yeah.
They have information in here on what working with a buyer looks like.
Yeah.
I would say if it gets to me, Dad, and you might disagree, and Mike, maybe you'll disagree as well. If they ask you to write an offer, that's when I would demand something be in writing.
There is an FAQ on that, Christian. If you're doing ministerial acts, yeah, you need one. Again, you're going to have the perception. Also, when we were doing the video, it's not just complying with NAR. You want something that verifies you're going to get paid. So the two-step, it's great to, comply with NAR, NABOR is going to enforce, the new practice guidelines, but let's not lose sight of the big goal of getting paid. So you're going to want something to verify that you're going to get paid.
Yeah, I think that's important. Mike, what do you think? What's kind of your opinion or your strategy on how you handle this?
I kind of go along with Don's thinking, but while we were talking, we did have a very interesting scenario pop up in that talk, which I'll bring up when you're ready for it.
Okay, yeah. Let me show you guys number 77 here real quick, if I can find out how to share my screen again.
And one of them deals with ministerial acts, Christian.
One, here's 77. If an MLS participant hosts an open house or provides access to a property on behalf of the seller only to an unrepresented buyer, will they be required to enter into a written agreement with those buyers touring the home? No. In this case, since the MLS participant is only working for the seller and not the buyer, the MLS participant does not need to enter into written agreement with the buyer. So Dad and Mike, your opinion is get something in writing, do a pre-touring agreement, do something, maybe a property specific. That way you can basically guarantee yourself if that buyer wanted to make an offer. But if that's not your business practice, if that's not how you want to do it, NAR gives you the ability to not require that. You don't need them to sign something if you're the listing agent, even on a private showing. All right, Mike, what was the other thing you wanted to talk about?
This is a scenario that happens periodically, and that is buyer broker agreement, where the agent is out of town, already has a buyer broker agreement with the buyer, but then asks another real estate agent to show the property for them while agent number one's out of town. And so the question is whether the second agent is going to show the property needs a buyer broker agreement in two scenarios. The second agent is with the same company, and the second scenario is the second agent is with another company.
Yeah,
Now,
so I love this question because I don't think a lot of people have done the thought process on it. But that buyer broker agreement, that's with who, Mike? Who signs that buyer broker agreement?
In the first scenario, I'd say you don't need one because it's that's signed by a broker or authorized representative of the company. It's for the company.
Yeah. Well, if you look at those buyer broker agreements, they are the named parties is the buyer and the broker, right?
Right.
So, Mike, in
Right.
your scenario, it's going to be John Smith, the buyer, and Downing Fry. Now, who signs it? That's based on who has the ability to sign it, who has the
Right.
The
authorization.
authorized rep of the.
Yeah, the authorized representative. So Downing Fry has, gives their agents in certain circumstances the ability to sign that on behalf of you, Mike. But that is a broker to buyer form. So if let's say you're on a big team or even just colleagues within the same brokerage, that buyer broker agreement protects both of them. And Mike, we've had that question come up dozens of times.
Yep.
Husband and wife that are a team, and it's signed by the husband, but the wife goes to show it, and they're worried, am I still okay? It's still okay. Technically, the bigger broker you have, the bigger brokerage you have, the more you're potentially protected because if it's agent within your same brokerage, both of you are protected under that BBA. Sometimes it's hard to actually make that work, but it's technically would work. Mike, what did you say the second scenario was?
Where the agent you have showing the property for the person that's out of town is actually with another firm, not the same company.
So in
That
that
gets
scenario,
dicey. That
that's
gets dicey
dicey.
because the way I see it, if the agent from the other firm gets a buyer broker agreement signed, then maybe the buyer's on the hook for with two different companies.
It could be. Or let's say that the person showing the house, they're the ones who do not have the buyer broker agreement. They're also not the listing agent, right?
Right.
So this person's just filling in, just helping out.
Exactly.
Um, well, I would say it would be bad, right, Dad? I mean,
Yeah, it
but how
doesn't.
bad could it be? I mean, the worst case scenario is that that person can't earn a commission with that buyer, right? Is that as bad as
Yeah.
it gets?
Well, there's that, and what is the potential for something before NABOR? And honestly, when you read all the FAQs, NABOR has a responsibility to be developing guidelines on this, and none have come out so far. We don't have any discussion on teams or delegation of duties in the uh, settlement agreement because it's the main practice changes of pages 29 and 30, the key ones that we deal with day in and day out, excluding things like steering and so forth. So you got very little broad stuff that's meant to apply to 50 states. It's not geared towards Florida. And NABOR hasn't come out with any additional interpretation on this. The FAQs don't discuss teams at all.
Well,
So
because I think they don't really need to. But I would say the person that's going to show the house to a buyer, even if it's as a favor to someone else, they're just not going to be able to earn a commission with that buyer on that house. They're just not going to be able to.
no,
But
they don't have
could the agent that set the whole thing up, that has a signed buyer broker agreement and then would be writing the offer, could they earn a commission on that? Absolutely. They
But
could.
if they're doing it as a favor to the participant to the buyer broker agreement, that's sort of like the subagents of the
Yeah.
seller,
Yeah.
arrangement.
Yeah, I would say the tricky part with that, Mike, is whether you're paying a referral fee or some sort of commission kickback to the agent that showed the house. Let's say it was a small amount. Let's say it was $100. Is that agent allowed to receive that $100 for showing the buyer that house? I don't know. I don't really want to answer that question, but that's where the real tricky part is. Someone actually mentioned, and this is where it gets tricky. My broker required an agent to have an aligned buyer broker agreement for a condo he was buying for himself and his wife. So the agent was buying a house for himself, and they wanted a buyer broker agreement with that agent. Yeah, I can see the broker just trying to be protective and be a little careful. Is it a little silly to make a buyer sign their own buyer broker agreement when they're also the brokerage? Maybe, but they're just trying to get their paperwork right. Um, So in that scenario, let's say you didn't do that, Dad, and let's say you didn't sign a buyer broker agreement, but then your broker comes back later and says, hey, this needed to be signed. You can't receive a commission. As the broker, I can't receive a commission on this.
Well, that's the number one rule is what does your broker require? We're just talking about Downing Fry, but what does your broker require? And if it's something like this, then you look at your independent contract agreement and,
Well, what I would think about in that scenario is I would try to negotiate where I'm waiving my commission for a lowered purchase price. And that's something that agents can always do, but they have to do it ahead of time. So we had a closing recently where an agent was buying something for themselves and they were going to get a commission on it. And then after, right before closing, she realized, wait a second, I think I'd rather just take a reduction in the sale price, maybe save money on taxes, whatever the answer might be. But the seller said no. They didn't want that. They wanted to keep prices high. They wanted to show like the highest purchase price possible for whatever reason.
Well, developers won't let you do that, but we did mention on
Yeah.
a Friday thing that you're better off tax-wise taking a reduction, unless you need the cash flow.
Maybe. Yeah, I had a client once that he wanted to be able to deduct expenses and didn't have any other income. So he needed income to deduct it against.
It's a tax.
It just depends. But I would say waiting till the day before closing was waiting too long. So, so if you were going to do that and the broker were to give you a hard time, you'd probably try and negotiate with your seller to waive commission and just take a reduced purchase price or take it as a credit instead of compensation. So if you just got let's say you kept the price the same and instead of commission, you took a credit to the buyer. You don't need a buyer broker agreement for that. So I would say just be thoughtful about it ahead of time so that you don't run into that problem later. Mike, what was the other issue that came up that you said that was in that video?
That's the one I was talking about, where you had the two scenarios: someone covering for you from your company or from another company. I have given, getting back to what you said earlier, I have told one of our agents that was buying for themselves that just do a buyer broker agreement for yourself. And my mindset was better safe than sorry. But also, I do know I've heard through the grapevine that the antitrust law firms are testing firms for compliance, and I thought better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
it shows you're trying to comply with the
Yeah.
agreement.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's where I want people to use these NAR FAQs. I think they're fantastic. If you're unsure, don't rely on the advice that I'm giving you or anybody. You can look at it in black and white and say, look, this is from NAR. This gives us our best idea. Do I still need this? Gives you something. But this was meant to be kind of a short video. And so I'm actually going to end it there. And I appreciate both of you for coming on. But if you have questions on buyer broker agreements or anything else, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you both.
Welcome back.
Thanks, guys.